Okay, Jack Spirko here on site in Gum Springs, Arkansas. And what we're doing right now is we're laying out the initial reference line off the key point, which is located right over there. When the dozer comes in, there's going to actually be a small pond area back there. And right where this laser is set up and going through out there, you can see Mark Shepard laying out the first initial reference line. And we have a second person on the other side of this valley here, another one of Mark's people, laying out an identical 1% grade off of there. This gives you an idea of the scope of the project. We'll catch up to Mark here. But these berms will be at 80 feet spacings, planted to a main frame all up that hill. And it pretty much, the way this ridge shape here is mirrored on the other side of the valley that's separated by the tree line. And it'll be done with pecan and chestnut, apple, and in the alleyways between, aronia and elderberry. And this is actually the most tedious part of the process right here, where we have to get this bang on right the first time through, because everything spaces off of this initial reference swale. So you can see they're putting flags at about probably every 30-40 feet. And when we start bringing the dozer through, we'll have people standing at these flags because the dozer operator can't see them, keeping the dozer in line as it comes through and pushes the swales. And until we do that, there's not much more to see than what you've already seen, so we'll check out. All right, what we've got right now is actually not real sophisticated, but pretty simple. And this is our key point that we're doing everything off of right here. And the dozer is just pushing what's going to amount to a small pond. And it doesn't really take an awful lot of effort to do. You can see we have a good operator. A good dozer operator drives at least 50% of the distance going forward. He only has to back up one time for another pass. People think of putting in a pond or a dam. They think of it taking a long time. With this level of clay and good soil, this won't take long at all. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to start our first push and basically scratch the main reference swale for the entire system. So what we're doing here, Nick's going to run ahead of Mark. Mark's there, he's got the flag. Obviously the dozer operator sitting up there can't see these flags in this grass. So we want at least 2 points of reference.
Hey, put that thing away before you hurt somebody.
At the entire time of the push. So you can see we've got another individual coming. We'll keep moving the individuals ahead. The dozer begun working on the key point dam. Eventually he's going to push a drive across berm, and that little dam is actually more for access than anything else. So the breast of the dam actually is the access point for vehicles to get to the other side of the system. He's going to come through and make a single pass, and that'll give us a reference line. He'll come back and make a second pass to clean it up, and then we'll do some work with the laser level. This is one of the faster methods of installing a swale. And it's really easy to hold that blade exactly where you want it, and just line the edge of the blade up with the guy out in front of you. You'll see he's heading for Nick right there, and then he'll move on and we'll send a runner down to the next flag. And to give you an idea of what happens on the first pass, it's not real pretty, but it's exactly on a 1% grade, downgrade. And what we're doing is this, you can see the ridge form out there, and we're taking this water from the valley here. And it'll fill that little dam, and that dam doesn't really need to hold long term. It'll fill though during a rain event. It'll discharge into this swale line, and it'll spread that water all the way out. And there's actually multiple little ridges and valleys across this whole system. So we'll take a single line across, and I'll check back with you on the second pass where you can get a better idea of what the swale looks like when it's cleaned up a bit. But you can see that machine has no problem just driving through. So what we've done here is we've stopped, and we're actually crossing a little valley here. And that means it's going to play with our contour a little bit. So we've marked the outer limits here, what'll be like what we call a drive-through pond. So we'll come back after we clean this swale up and we'll push a small pocket pond into here. That's kind of a wet weather pond system, a habitat pond system. And there'll be multiples of these as we go through. These aren't your big dams. These are your quick installed, a couple pushes of the bucket as we clean things up toward the end of the project. Just following the dozer. Following the dozer, and we're looking for the next place, so we'll have a crossover of a small valley. We'll make sure we mark those as we go. So this one's a little more obvious than the last one. You can see there's a road that comes through here, and there's a natural, it's not just the access, there's a natural valley, which is probably why they decided to use it as a roadway. It comes down through here, and that valley goes all the way down through there. It's a little higher here and a little higher there. And if you were trying to stay on full contour, you'd come up and off, and you'd lose the straightness of the rows for mechanical harvest on a large system. So right here will be a place to come back, like I was saying earlier, to push in basically at what you call a drive over and a pocket pond. And because the operator's holding that blade level, it's really obvious. Now, like I said, this one's really obvious. But you can see you've got a big swale, and it just opens up. It's barely scratching the ground right here. And then, as soon as you cross this little valley, you go back into cutting a nice swale. So this is a patented Mark Shepard cheat, basically, to keep your swales on, I guess, a bending contour, but a relatively straight path through the landscape, holding your 1% grade or whatever grade you've decided to use for your main frame for your keyline reference point. And we'll show you this pocket pond. Okay, so the dozer scratched the line on the first pass. It means we don't need to mark it for them going back, and the second pass will go a lot faster. Really looks like simple work, but it takes a skilled operator to hold this, and this wet clay like this especially, and really get that line bang on. Nice, perfect slope to the back cut. Machine fast enough to maintain momentum. Not too fast so that it doesn't actually get down in the ground. Too slow, you'll start to bog a little with it. Nice, clean pass. Picked a little up there. Reset. Continue on. All right, so we're on the next swale upgrade from the first one we cut, and we weren't making very good progress with the bulldozer we had. We had a D4. This is a D6, and I had to run to catch up with him because I didn't have my camera ready when he started. He's almost to the end of the field, and this is a good quarter mile of swale here, and he's pushing it almost as fast as a slow walking speed, straight through, and he's getting the results from a single push, a scratch line, that he was getting from 2 pushes with the D4. This is an example of why you really want the biggest equipment that makes sense for the job. And again, we're coming out of a primary valley, spreading the water to the primary ridge line, 1% down slope. And that's really off the mainframe swale down here. And all the other swales are just 80 feet up, 80 foot spacings up, 80 foot spacings down. You can see, I'll try to get up and past him. This is a totally different level of bulldozer capability here. Nice little curve here at the end. You can see why he's taking that curve. You see the shape of this. So you've got a ridge line here to all right, we'll see what it looks like on the next pass. So we've now dropped down from the mid swale. I still have to make more than another pass on that last one, but it just makes sense to go back and forth with the scratch. And I wanted to get kind of the front view for you here. And he's waiting for a second to get a bearing on his spotters because he can't spot these flags. You see the D6. We call that first pass a scratch. You can see right here, we'll have to do a drop over basically. And this gives them a nice line. And the reason we're doing a scratch back is so the guys can go out and mark out more lines, and he won't need them now until he's done with 2 swales instead of just 1. And once he's got this scratch in, he's independent. He can work on his own. And he doesn't need them telling him where to go. That's the benefit of having a guy that's actually worked machinery like this on projects like this. Once he knows where you want it, you can pretty much leave him to himself. Just real quick here, this is Nick Ferguson collecting seed. Wild garlic. We never miss a chance to pick up seed from any location. We actually have two cultivars here. We have a purple and a white wild garlic. This is what I was talking about on the air very recently that we have on our property, but this actually looks a little different than what I have. Here, hold that. You can see the cluster when it's on the stalk. And I've got a Ziploc bag and a bunch of that's going home with me. I bet Nick's gonna take a bunch home too.
Oh yeah.
Wild garlic, guys, that's what it looks like. And like I said, you can pull up the bulbs and eat it. The best thing to eat is that little guy right there. Yummy. All right, guys, that's what it looks like. That's what you're looking for.
He's like a freaking little kid on an Easter egg hunt. Dude. I found a bunch more.
Woohoo. Well, look how much I found. Well, I guess I did.
Here, I got a
It
handful.
doesn't look very impressive now because I picked it all already.
I found purple ones. I found green ones.
Green one. Wow. They were so red I thought it was clover.
I know, that's what I was saying.
Oh, hell yeah. There it goes. It's on now.
Look at these.
Yeah, you got the mic on your end.
So purple.
Yeah, way more purple than the stuff on my property. It's gonna be hard to not eat this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm standing on a swale berm where we made what Mark calls a drive-through pond. So the main Keyline Swale, which is on a 1% grade, just barely off contour, spreading water, is down there. This swale is upgrade, the first one upgrade. To be able to bring equipment in here and do mechanical harvesting and mechanical brush hogging if they're not grazing it or what have you, we wanted the swales equal distance. That means that this swale is not going to be perfectly on contour or perfectly on a 1% grade. And there's going to be places like here where we cross a primary valley going up around a ridge right there where it's quite low. So what we do about that is we have that swale coming down on its 1% grade, and in this low spot we use the dozer and flatten this area out. And what this creates is, yes, a low spot. Yes, it's a place where water collects, and that water will fill back to about where you see those ripples in the grass right there, and out to about right there, and then back over here to about right there. So a little oblong shaped pond, and in dry weather it'll be dry, you can drive right through it. In wet weather it'll hold water, be amphibian habitat, bird habitat, etc. And that does a couple things. One, it gives us an extra reserve of water, and two, it deals with this low spot. The swales up above, which are hard to see in the high grass, they have much less of this deviation. I've now referred to all these little techniques of pocket ponds and drive overs as shepherd cheats. And it's probably the biggest thing I've learned on this project so far. So there you go, drive-through pond. I think it will make a lot more sense in the future when we get video of it when it's full. I decided to come over on this side to give you kind of a final look at this part of the project. And over here you can kind of see the landform a lot better because there was so much honey locust growing over here that we had this all bush hogged. And so it's open. So this is really what the other side looks like too. And again, this is our key point. There'll eventually be a dam here. They're going to excavate that material and form a berm right there. That berm will be wide enough and compacted to where equipment can drive over. It basically becomes an access path, and yet we're holding surplus water here. That pond overflows into this keyline, this pattern setting keyline swale, which is mirrored on the other side. So it overflows to both sides, and that spreads the water all the way out to the ridge where the tree line is in the distance. And then we have equal spacing all the way up. And down here you can see another example of how we compensate when we end up having to deal with crossing a valley. If you're doing something and it's just for artistic purposes or backyard things and it looks really cool when it's all really windy, that's fine. But when you're dealing with broad acre, if you have this swale come here and stay on contour, it would have to go up to about right there and then come back down around. That's really difficult to deal with on a broadacre site where you're trying to harvest, very large amounts of product, or trying to deal with managing your grazing or bringing equipment through to cut hay or whatever. So we have to deal with these little deviations, and we just deal with them by accepting them for what they are and doing a little bit of pushing with the dozer. And it takes a dozer to make these little ponds just a few moments. This one here probably took 10 minutes to do. This is not like a pond you would put in, to put fish in. It's not very big, it's just a habitat pond. It's also nice and gentle. And if you come through here in dry time like this, you can drive right through it, just like a pathway. No excavation permits are needed. All we're doing, it's not really a pond. We're just taking a little extra fill to build up the berm. That's how you phrase it to the Department of Making You Sad if you have any issues with that. But there's the mainframe design, and these swales are close to a mile long to get out to that tree line. There's 4 of them on this side. I think there's 5 or 6 on the other side. And we have another site that hopefully we'll get some video on. And right out there in the distance, that's the awesome Nick Ferguson.